the main character. And the entire time, presumably his wife and daughters are sitting in the crowd like I had no idea I was married to fucking Rambo.
Quinn Talon was irresistible to high school bullies. Just imagine what they'd do if they knew he dreamed of feasting on their blood. An energy blast sent Quinn flying onto his back. Rex, the ringleader of Quinn's bullies, looked down on him.
Still breathing, huh? You should have stayed down.
Quinn got back up. He wanted to fight back, but vampires were hated and considered monsters. He smiled.
Stay down.
He is back at SOB2, and he is no longer a strap hanger and supply sergeant. He is a full-fledged SOG infantry guy, and he is going to be leading teams. By November 10th, a SOG team goes out on a mission. They end up getting pinned down and are not able to get extracted. The best estimates is this is not conventional NBA forces. This is some type of special unit that has been brought in to go toe-to-toe with SOG, and they need to go in there with a bunch of more guys and finish the job. This mission would go on to become known as Slam 7, when a massive SOG force, 115 men, all go in to help recover this team. So the choppers come in and they're taking fire in the landing zone immediately. Howard jumps out of the helicopter when it's still 15 feet above the ground and starts returning fire, killing 2 enemies immediately. They continue fighting through this ambush. They make their way to this SOG recon team, and it's a scene out of a horror movie. All of the members of this recon team have been executed. Every one of these guys was severely wounded in battle, and then they were executed by being shot in the head by the NVA. While other men are still engaging the enemy, Howard and some of the other leaders on the ground are examining the bodies. They're going to recover the bodies, and Howard notices that one of the men's eyes is tracking him, even though he's been shot in the head, in addition to having 19 other gunshot wounds. They call the helicopters back in. They start coming in. They're loading up the bodies and all the wounded men. The helicopters are taken off, and one of the helicopters ends up getting shot down by massive anti-aircraft guns. Their best guess is that it's an anti-aircraft setup on the back of a half-track. So then they go, they rescue those guys, get them out of there, and then they call in for orders like, hey, there's heavy anti-aircraft guns. What do you want us to do? Thinking they're still going to get extracted. The whole point of coming out here was to recover the men, or the bodies of the men. That's what they've done. Time to leave. Chain of command says you need to take out the anti-aircraft guns. You don't know where it came from, go find them and take them out. Okay, this just turned into an overnight operation. They bed down for the night. They get ambushed in the middle of the night with grenades and mortars, one of which peppers Howard's entire backside with shrapnel. Howard then calls in air support, orders his men to only return fire with 40mm grenade launchers because that's not going to give off a muzzle flash, giving the enemy their position. Airstrike comes in, the NVA leaves, they're cool for the rest of the night. The next day, this massive element of about 100 men now is still moving, looking for these anti-aircraft guns, and the entire time they're just thinking like, this is too big of an element, we're too far behind enemy lines, this is a horrible idea. Day after that, they're completely out of supplies. They need food, they need water, they need more ammunition. None of these guys were planning on this being a multi-day operation. So they call in a supply drop, they get the supplies, they got food, they got water, they got ammo. The only problem is they're behind enemy lines, and now the enemy has a general idea where they're at because they saw the supply drop. They get surrounded by the NVA, they have to hunker down, a massive firefight ensues, and they have to call for extraction or they're all gonna die. Helicopters start showing up, they're getting the wounded on board first, they're starting to get some guys out of there, and then like the third helicopter gets shot down, and now they have to go rescue those guys too. So Howard leads a team and they go rescue the crew from the down chopper, get them back while they're still loading choppers and getting people out of here. Remember, they got 100 guys and you can only fit so many on a helicopter. They're trying to coordinate the choppers landing in between waves of NVA attack. That way the choppers aren't getting shot down while they're in this massive firefight. And as time passes, it starts to get dark out, and they're going to have to be out there overnight. Howard and the remaining men on the ground are basically stuck there fighting all night long. However, they get a ton of air support. They've got A-10 Sky Raiders dropping napalm. They even get a C-47 Spooky gunship, which is the predecessor to the AC-130. Literally a cargo plane that a bunch of grunts just cut the sides out of, and mounted artillery and miniguns that just circles around them, mowing down anything that tries to get near them all night long. During this night, Howard gets hit with another grenade and has more shrapnel inside of him, which he's pretty much more shrapnel than Guy at this point. Finally, morning comes around, it's foggy as shit out, the battle's died down, it's really looking like they're going to make it out of this alive, and through the fog, there's 2 silhouettes coming towards them with their hands in the air, and it's 2 NVA soldiers. Howard and the commanding officer both yell, "Don't shoot," because if they're surrendering, we want to take them in for intel, because very few NVA soldiers have been captured to gain intel. Unfortunately, with this massive SOG element, there was a large contingency of indigenous people that were fighting alongside SOG, and those guys did not listen and shot both of them immediately. At this point, Howard's pissed, the commanding officer's pissed off, and they're just like, fuck. They're waiting on the choppers to come, and after a couple of minutes, another silhouette comes walking forward with his hands up. It's another NVA trying to...
in a
surrender.
John.
And before anybody can react, Howard jumps up.
I'm in a John Deere 8715 with a front wheel assist. Pretty sweet, but man, there's too much snow out here. This is gonna be a fun
The
day.
little aid station on their fob isn't big enough to handle his injuries, so he gets sent off to the hospital. While he's there, he finds out that that is only one of 3 NVA that have been captured by SOG in years. And the intel that they gained from him led to 9 successful bombings of NVA bases. For this, he was again written up for the Medal of Honor, but it was downgraded to a Silver Star and a Purple Heart. While at this hospital on a larger base, Bob Howard decided to do Bob Howard stuff, and he didn't like the food in the hospital, so in his hospital pajamas, he leaves the hospital and just goes to a normal chow hall. While he's at this chow hall, 2 Vietnamese on a moped pull up and throw a grenade into the crowd of soldiers. Everybody freaks out, everybody's diving, nobody knows what to do. The NP that's standing there with a gun, because he's the only guy with a gun right now, is just like locked up, not knowing what to do. Howard, in his hospital pajamas, grabs the M16 from the MP, gets down in a prone position, shoots the passenger off the moped, causing the driver to crash, and then chases down the moped, confronts the driver, they get into an altercation, and he shoots that guy too. He then walks back to the chow hall, hands the rifle back to the MP, and finishes his lunch. So Howard recovers, gets back to SOB2, starts going out on missions again. His next big mission is to go out and recover a SOG operative that is MIA from previous mission. So they go in with helicopters, and as soon as the helicopters come out, they start getting lit up by enemy gunfire. It's an ambush. They are using this guy as bait. Howard ends up making out of the helicopter. He estimates that there's probably 2 platoons launching this ambush, and in the first opening seconds, 8 NVA soldiers got killed. In the opening minutes of this battle, Howard gets hit with an enemy grenade up close. It launches him 10 feet down a hill, and he is now unconscious. When he finally comes to, he wakes up and he sees red. Not like he sees red, he's angry and he just drank a Monster Energy drink and his name's Kyle and he sees a bunch of drywall red. No, like that's the only thing he sees is the color red. And for a minute, he freaks out thinking he's been blinded. He still hears gunshots and explosions going off all around him. All hell's breaking loose. He has no idea how long he's been unconscious. He starts wiping his eyes and they're just caked with blood. He's bleeding all over the place and his vision starts finally coming back. He reaches for his gun. It's been blown up by the grenade. It's completely worthless. He goes to stand up. He can't. He shattered one of his ankles. So he is now behind enemy lines in the middle of a gunfight, blown up, can't walk, and has no gun. And then he hears screaming and smells burning flesh. All the rest of the men that aren't injured have made their way into the wood line off the landing zone, and there is now an NVA soldier that is going to all of the wounded men, mostly indigenous guys, and Robert Howard, and he is walking up to them with a flamethrower and burning them alive. At this point, Howard knows he's fucked. He's about to get burned alive, so he starts digging around for anything he has on him that's going to be helpful. He ends up finding a frag grenade. His hands are so messed up, he can't really use his fingers yet with a lot of dexterity. So he's fighting, trying to get his fingers in, and he manages to pull the pin on this grenade. He's holding the spoon down, and he figures, I'll blow myself off rather than get cooked. But he waits. He's in some tall grass. Maybe this guy isn't going to see him, and he's not going to have to blow himself up. So that's what he does. He just waits there, holding this grenade spoon down so it doesn't blow up. He's got the pin in the other hand. In case he gets lucky, you shove that back in, and it's all good. And he waits, and eventually the flamethrower walks up right in front of him. And he is right there, and him and the flamethrower lock eyes, and the flamethrower sees that Howard's holding the grenade, and that dude's got a flamethrower attached to his fucking back. If Howard lets it go, Howard's taking this guy with him, and he knows it. And Howard, with his dark veteran sense of humor, all he can think to himself is, fucking gotcha. And this flamethrower and Howard are just looking at each other right in the eyes. Howard's got this big shit-eating grin on his face, like, I'm going to take you with me. And eventually the flamethrower just kind of nods and starts to step backwards. And as soon as that happens, the SOG guys in the tree line see the flamethrower and start shooting at him, and he takes off running into the tree line. Howard throws the grenade after him, has no idea if he hit the guy or not, turns around and starts crawling towards his men. And the crazy part, in his head, he wasn't thinking, I need to get to my guys to get help for me. In his head, he was thinking, I gotta get to my guys, they need my help. Which is the most main character energy shit ever. On his way there, he comes across his lieutenant, who's alive, but in worse shape than he is, really shot up. And he gets his web gear off, throws that next to him, and starts rendering first aid. And then an enemy bullet hits the LT's web gear and detonates the ammunition inside of it, launching Howard and the LT all over again. He loses consciousness.
Dare anybody to try and interfere. In Supremacy World War III, the fate of the world is in your hands. Download now and join the fight.
I heard 1,000 stories, but none could describe this place. The road west is filled with failures. It was a dream. and the dream is coming true. We are in the land of...
He comes to, crawls back over to the lieutenant, and starts dragging him towards the men. Finally gets to his group of guys. It's not everybody. There's only 8 guys there, plus Howard and the LT. Everybody else is scattered out throughout the battlefield. Howard takes the LT's radio, starts calling in airstrikes, tells one of the men to hand him a gun. They toss him a 1911, not wanting to give up their own rifle. As he's calling in these airstrikes, a squad of MVA charge their position with bayonets, wanting to take him alive. Howard ends up shooting 3. His men take out the rest. Howard's still on the radio. They're sending in gunships.
Hey, Joe Sousa. This is Hines Creek, Alberta. Way up in northern Alberta. And, yeah, I'm trying to find some grain bags out here in the fucking whiteness. Still can't find them, but I'll just keep doing circles until this pile of snow is so fucking big I can't do anything. Thanks for watching, man.
Small groups of SOG guys that got separated, and he gets everybody on the ground consolidated. He now has about 30 men. From here, Howard asks the medic how his lieutenant's doing. The medic says he's doing everything he can, but he doesn't think he's going to make it, to which Howard replies, and I quote, "Make him make it." Howard then brings in all the able-bodied men that he has them consolidate ammunition, and then pretty much just tells them how it is. We're not moving anymore. We're going to stay right here. You're going to fight or you're going to die, and if you try to run, I will shoot you myself.
Everyone fights and quits. Don't do your job, I'll shoot you.
He then directs his men where to place claymores and asks his men if anybody has strobe lights, collects all the strobe lights that they have, and crawls around their perimeter and places the strobe lights in place before crawling back to the center to man the radio. Once back at the radio, he tells headquarters that his perimeter is marked and they need to shoot pretty much everywhere that isn't inside of this triangle. They tell him the Huey gunships are 15 minutes out. He doesn't have 15 minutes. The NVA just launched another major attack. The only thing they have right now is a Cessna 01 Bird Dog circling overhead, mostly there to help coordinate airstrikes, but it does have 4 white phosphorus rockets on board. It's not a lot, but it's better than nothing. Robert tells them exactly where to fire these rockets. They fly by, fire the 4 white phosphorus rockets, and repel this wave of the attack. The 01 Bird Dog pilot then radios down to Robert, "That's all we've got," to which Robert replies, "You got an M16 up there?" And they're like, "Yeah." He goes, "Fly by and drop it off. I need one." So now at least he's got a gun, and he's got to survive another 10 minutes before the Huey gunships get there. NVA launches another attack. This time they're trying to come through a creek bed. Robert directs his men to use 40mm grenades and just start lobbing them into this creek bed and repels that wave of the attack. The next wave comes. This time they're coming towards the same place that Robert had all of his men place all the claymores. They let him get up close, detonate the claymores, repel that wave. Finally, the Huey gunships show up, but it's getting dark out. They can't see much, so Howard has to direct their fire from the radio on the ground. And this goes on for hours. When the Hueys run out of fuel and ammunition, they get cycled out with a Moonbeam gunship. And when that runs out of fuel and ammunition...
Yeah, we're only like 4 o'clock in the afternoon here. But the sun goes down at like 5:30, so it's gonna be getting dark soon, actually. Already turned the lights on. Oh, there's so much snow, man.
Man on the ground, and he is going to be the get the 2 indigenous.
Your iPhone 17 needs our most advanced mouse case ever with the most advanced camera control button. And here's why. This is the iPhone 17, and these are our thinnest, most...
So Daniel Morgan's back in Frederick County, Kentucky. Really the only historical record we have of him at this point, again, is the court records and the general store records out of Winchester. Same thing. He's getting in bar fights. He's drinking. He's gambling. He's doing what he does. Okay. Now, despite what I said earlier about being very hard to get arrested in Virginia in the 1700s, he does manage to do it on several occasions. In 1760, he actually steals a horse in a cart, and being a horse thief back then is kind of a big deal. So he does get arrested. He gets ordered to pay back the horse. And then the very next year, in 1761, he gets arrested again because he burns down the tobacco shack of a man by the name of Jeremiah Wood. Now, I don't know the circumstances that led up to this happening, but it did happen, and Daniel Morgan proves to be the main character yet again because Daniel Morgan goes into court and pleads guilty. He walks in front of a judge and a jury, and he's like, "Yeah, I did that." And the judge and the jury are like, "I don't believe you." you're innocent. And Morgan's just like, dope. All right, then a couple years after that, in 1763, he apparently changes it up and starts looking for a wife because according to the Winchester General Store ledger, there was approximately 3 women all using Daniel Morgan's credit line to buy lingerie, chocolates, and other small items. And by the next year, 1764, that number had dwindled down to just one, a lady by the name of Abigail Curry, who would go on to become his wife, and they would have 2 daughters, Nancy and Betsy. Okay, now what's important to understand about his wife Abigail is that, socially speaking, she's way out of Daniel Morgan's league. She is the daughter of a pretty wealthy farmer in the area, and that's a big deal because, like, how you get social status at this point in time is owning land, and her father owns a ton of it, whereas Daniel Morgan is just like the bad boy horse thief with the scar on his face and the scars all over his back, and he's just this huge monster of a man. But simply bagging and marrying the rich girl wasn't enough for Daniel Morgan. He wanted to start climbing that social ladder, and the only way he could do that was to become a landowner. The problem is, he made more money running his wagon than he ever would be able to as a farmer, but he ends up buying land anyways, just for the social aspect of getting to say that he's a landowner, so that he can start working his way up that social ladder, even if it ends up costing him money in the long run. And the reason I bring this up is because it's going to be important to understand that Daniel Morgan has this chip on his shoulder for the rest of his life, okay? He's not some wealthy aristocrat. He doesn't come from a good family. He's, socially speaking, at the bottom of the totem pole. It's going to be that rags to riches story, and it's going to be a chip on Morgan's shoulder for his entire life, that he wants more and more status all the time. So that's what he works on for like the next 10 years of his life, getting more and more money, getting more and more land, becoming a bigger and bigger fixture in the community so that he gets that social respect. Then by April 1775, the battles of Lexington and Concord, the shot heard around the world. America is now fighting a revolution against the British, and Daniel Morgan is all for it. Then 2 months later, June 1775, the Continental Congress requests the formation of 10 rifle companies to go and help George Washington fight in Boston, and one of those rifle companies is to come from Frederick County, Virginia. So the Frederick County officials meet up. They're going to end up recruiting the 96 men that are going to comprise this rifle company, and then they have to decide who's going to be the officer to lead these men into battle. So Daniel Morgan volunteers, right? Why not? He already doesn't like the British. He wants to fight them anyways, and if he does it as an officer, it's going to raise his social status. So it's a win-win for Daniel Morgan, and the Frederick County officials are like, oh, Daniel Morgan, the 6'2" land-owning giant that's apparently unkillable, wants to lead our men into battle. Yeah, you can have the job. Okay, a little bit of important context. I need you to understand, these guys are basically like militia. Like, if you think of Revolutionary War militia, that's what these guys look like. They're running around. They're a bunch of rough, tough Virginia frontiersmen. They've got Kentucky rifles. They don't have muskets. They've got tomahawks because most of them are French and Indian War veterans. They've got knives for scalping the enemies. They're running around in hunting shirts, not army uniforms. However, they're technically not militia because they are authorized and sanctioned by the Continental Congress, and they're allegedly going to be paid by the Continental Congress as well. So while they are functionally militia, they're technically part of the Continental Army. And the reason I bring this up at all is because Daniel Morgan is going to get a lot more notoriety as an officer of the Continental Army as opposed to a militia officer. Because of that, Daniel Morgan doesn't just want to do it, he's going to set a tone right out of the gate. There's 10 rifle companies getting sent up to Boston to help George Washington. He wants to be the first one there. So Daniel Morgan and his rifle company set out, and they travel 23 miles a day on average for 21 days straight, covering 484 miles to Boston, and they are the first ones there by over a week. Okay, if you've never been in the military or ruck marched or anything, traveling 23 miles a day for 21 days straight is fucking crazy, okay? That's the equivalent of running a marathon and then some every single day, except you also have all of this stuff that you need to live on your back as well. You're carrying a gun, you have all your clothes, all your ammunition, food, the whole shebang, and you're carrying it the entire time. It's crazy. Who's gonna carry the boats? So is making it to Boston in 21 days and not losing a single man impressive? Absolutely. Does it make Daniel Morgan look good? Absolutely. Does it violate the cardinal rule in the military of never be the first one to do anything? Absolutely. So because Daniel Morgan's rifle company was the first one there, they get the unique privilege of being voluntold that they're going to get attached to this mission to go invade Canada. Actually, the second and third fastest rifle companies also got attached to this mission. But the point stands. Never make the podium, okay? Just aim for middle of the pack. Okay, real quick, oversimplified explanation of this mission. George Washington has this new hotshot young officer that he regards as a strategic military genius, and his name is Benedict Arnold. And basically what Benedict Arnold has come up with is a plan of being like, hey, America's got 13 colonies. We've declared our independence from Great Britain. We're now fighting about it. Hear me out. Since we just got started with the fighting, what if we strike first? What if we go, we invade Canada, we take over Quebec, and we declare it the 14th colony of the United States of America? That way, the English, rather than trying to fight the 13 colonies, is immediately focused on fighting the 14th colony to reclaim what we most recently took, and then we can divert all of our resources there and duke it out away from home. In addition to that, it's also going to put the British in the new mindset of, oh shit, we're the ones playing defense. We're not playing offense. We need to defend all of our other areas touching the 13 colonies so they don't attack those as well. So honestly, it's a really good plan. And then reality sets in, and it is pretty much a shit show like the entire time. They set off with about 1,100 men. There's 3 Virginia rifle companies and then a bunch of other Continental Army companies together. And the Virginia rifle companies kind of were like, hey, we were more or less commissioned by Congress. We were raised to be here. We were separate from this chain of command under this Benedict Arnold guy. We don't really want to associate with him. We only want to take our orders from Daniel Morgan. At which point Daniel Morgan, always being starving for social status, is like, I mean, hey, the boys want to take orders from me, not you. To which Benedict Arnold, just trying to keep everybody together, is like, fuck, okay, fine, I don't care. Just take your 3 rifle companies, you spearhead, you can be our scouts, that's what you're good at anyways. But that's the least of their worries, because the entire journey into Canada is pretty much an unmitigated disaster. Almost the entire force ends up getting dysentery from drinking unpurified water. They end up losing most of their food and medical supplies crossing rivers, and by the time they make it there, they're literally starving. I'm not like they were low on food and they were rationing and they were really hungry. Like, no, there's multiple accounts of men boiling shoe leather and eating it, starving. By the time they reached Quebec, the army that had left of 1,100 people had dwindled down to 600 between illness, death, and dudes just straight up leaving and going home because this sucks. So the army's essentially cut in half already before the battle's even started, and the half that remains is pretty beat up, starving. Benedict Arnold realizes he's not going to be able to take the city of Quebec under these conditions, so he just sets up camp, writes some letters, tries to get some resupply, and tries to get more backup. Luckily enough, resupply does end up making it. He ends up getting all of his men fed, and then shortly after that, Major General Montgomery shows up with even more men on December 1st, 1775. So now they got more men, they got their guys fed, they go up to Quebec, and they're like, hey, here's the deal, how about you surrender? To which the Canadians were like, nah. At that point, they cut off supply lines into the city, trying to starve them out, while they're also setting up a battle plan of how they're going to invade this city and attack. Now, at this point in time, Quebec is a walled city. They have barricades, so they're going to have to end up climbing or breaking through these barricades to get into the city and take it over. The battle strategy that they come up with is that Benedict Arnold's men are going to attack one barricade, and Major General Montgomery's men are going to attack another barricade, and they're going to meet in the middle and then take the remainder of the city. Okay, now fast forward the night of December 30th, 1775. It is the first snow of the year, and that is when the Americans decide to attack. Focusing in on Daniel Morgan and Benedict Arnold's men, the barricade that they are attacking, they have a bunch of ladders, and they're going to scale over the top of it. So they go rushing in. Daniel Morgan and Benedict Arnold both kind of for being out in front of their guys. Benedict Arnold immediately takes a musket ball directly to the leg, drops him out of the fight completely. Now Daniel Morgan is running the show all by himself. So Daniel Morgan and his men go. They end up getting a ladder on top of this barricade. Daniel Morgan is the first guy up the ladder. Right as he reaches the top, the British fire muskets, and the blast burns his face from the heat and knocks him off the ladder, falls down to the bottom flat on his back, immediately gets back up, and he is now the second man up the ladder after himself. And this time he goes, jumps over the barricade, falls the other direction,
Thanks for
lands
watching,
on top
Krishna.
of the cannon on the ground floor, and messes up his back. He immediately pulls himself underneath the cannon as the British are trying to stab him with bayonets to give himself a few more seconds to recapture his composure and get some more Americans over the wall to start fighting. More men come rushing in. They start fighting. There's only 30 British soldiers manning this barricade. They end up surrendering just a few minutes later. From there, all the Americans come rushing in. They're fighting in the city, house by house, building by building. They're literally doing CQB with Kentucky rifles and muskets. It's crazy. But things are going good for Daniel Morgan and his guys. They're taking everything over. Finally, they make it to the rendezvous point where they're supposed to meet up with Major General Montgomery, and he's not there yet. But all the other officers on the mission, primarily the ones that were working under Benedict Arnold, are like, actually, I think that we should stay here and follow orders and, do what we were told, because, I don't think we have enough guys to be able to secure all the prisoners that we've taken while also advancing in the city and blah, 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 blah. So Daniel Morgan's kind of outvoted. He doesn't want to, put this huge rift between the forces, so he's like, fucking fine, I guess we'll sit here on our hands for a couple minutes. And a couple minutes turns into a couple hours, and then it turns into like half the day as they're just sitting here waiting for Major General Morgan and his guys to show up. What they don't know at the time is that Major General Morgan and his guys, when they launched their attack on their barricade, Major General Morgan was shot and killed on the spot, forcing them to pull back, at which point his second and third in command launched a second attack, and his second and third in command also died. And then the third and fourth in command are like, fuck this, we're going home. And they're not coming at all. No. Hell no. So Morgan and his guys are just chilling in some buildings and houses trying to stay out of the storm. And then eventually they notice that, oh hey, that barricade that we took over earlier is it's shut now, and there's guys with red coats at the top of it. Did we not leave guards on the entryway that we took over? No, we didn't? Fuck. Daniel Morgan is now beyond pissed. He knew he should have been sitting there waiting for backup to come. He should have just kept pressing forward. He would have taken over the entire city by now. But he went against his instinct to listen to everybody else, and now it has shot them in the foot. He grabs his men, and they all go marching back to the original barricade. As they come marching up, a British naval officer walks out on top of the barricade. He opens the door, him and some guards come out, and this naval officer that allegedly has the name Anderson yells down to Morgan and his men, surrender your arms, to which Morgan immediately shoulders his Kentucky rifle and shoots that guy directly in the face.
Everyone who touched the gauntlets turned to ash. 12 students, 5 centuries. The most gifted ability users burned.
Immediately, the men come running up with the ladders. It is a full-scale assault on the barricade, now going the other way. They end up getting driven back, and then they try again. They get driven back again, at which point they retreat back into the city, and they're doing more CQB with rifles and muskets for hours. And then eventually, they get completely surrounded, and they have nowhere to go. At this point, the American men start surrendering one by one, small batch by small batch. Daniel Morgan remains as the sole American that is yet to surrender, and he refuses to do so. So they end up getting Daniel Morgan like separated from all the other Americans, and they have him surrounded, and they get him backed up to a wall. Just a bunch of British troops with muskets and bayonets all pointed at Daniel Morgan. Daniel Morgan standing there with his saber, refusing to surrender. The British are like, put down your sword, and he's like, which one of you is gonna come take it from me? And remember, Daniel Morgan's like a 6'2" giant with a sword, basically being like, who's man enough to come get it? And the British guys are like, I have no idea what to do. If we kill the commander of their current army, all hell's gonna break loose all over again. So they don't want to kill him, but also they don't want to go try to take the sword in person. So they're like, shit. And luckily, as fate would have it, I don't know if it's divine intervention, I don't know if it's just the main character plotline, I don't know if the British sent a guy to go grab him, but one way or another, a Catholic priest ends up showing up and witnessing this scene, at which point Daniel Morgan, upon seeing this priest, walks up to him with a sword and gives his sword to the priest and says, I'll give it to you, but I'm not giving it to any of these scoundrels. And they take Daniel Morgan and the rest of his men into custody. Okay, just so we're all clear, historically speaking, this is a complete and utter disaster. This is the Continental Army's first major defeat. 30 Americans have just been killed, and another 431 have been taken prisoner. From here, Daniel Morgan spends almost an entire year as a prisoner of war, and it's important to understand at this point in time that a lot of the British military officers and the United States Continental Army officers all know each other, because almost all of the United States Continental Army officers used to be British officers, so like, they're acquainted. A lot of them have met, they're well aware of who Daniel Morgan is, they know about Benedict Arnold, General George Washington, they all know each other. So, they go up to Daniel Morgan and they're like, hey, hear me out, we'll give you a pardon so you're innocent, and then we'll make you a colonel in the British military if you trade sides and come work with us because you're awesome. At this point, Daniel Morgan, remembering the 499 scars on his back, is like, nah, I'm good, don't insult me again. And he just sits out the entire year as a POW until he gets traded back to the American forces in January of 1777. So Daniel Morgan gets traded back, and he, is waiting around for orders, trying to figure out what's going on. Apparently George Washington had petitioned Congress to end up making Daniel Morgan a colonel, which is incredible news to him because he thought he was going to get kicked out or thrown in jail or reprimanded because he surrendered. This was America's first surrender, and it was technically his fault under his command. He was not expecting good news when he got released back to the Americans, but he ended up getting made a colonel. So at this point, Daniel Morgan is pumped, right? He's going to get to go fight the British again. He's got a promotion. Everything's going great. George Washington says, hey, I stood up this new unit, it's called the Divisional Rifle Corps, you're going to be the commander of it, they're all carrying rifles, none of them are carrying muskets. Okay, and here's the important context of understanding this unit. This unit, to anybody other than Daniel Morgan, would be considered a punishment, and I'm not sure if George Washington meant it that way or not, but Daniel Morgan was happy about it either way. Now, the reason this unit was a punishment was because none of the other...
This is a green bag I'm trying to plow out in the field.
They preferred all their soldiers to be carrying muskets. Now, if you know anything about guns, that sounds...
This is winter farming.
Because everybody knows that rifles are better than muskets, because rifles have rifling, which
I just don't know where they are, because I can't fucking see them. I think I already hit one.
Looking at this with the benefit of hindsight, we understand what firearms are going to evolve into and what battle doctrine is going to evolve into. That hasn't really been designed or figured out yet. So the common battle doctrine of the day is to have your men march in a very tight formation, shoulder to shoulder, up to another group of guys standing shoulder to shoulder, kind of aim your musket in their general direction, pull the trigger, reload as fast as you can, and pull the trigger again until all the bad guys are gone. And if that's the type of warfare you're trying to conduct, the musket actually is kind of better because the rifle is a little bit more complicated. It takes longer to reload, so your formation is firing less ammunition, even though it is more accurate, but then your formation also isn't as tightly grouped because all the riflemen are trying to get some elbow room to actually take aim, so it's more of a scattered formation too. So a lot of the other more traditional military officers that are more well-versed in the conventional battle doctrine of the day absolutely hated riflemen. So for that reason, George Washington took almost all of them that he had, stuck them in one unit, and then gave them to Daniel Morgan. Upon assuming command of the Provisional Rifle Corps, Daniel Morgan also gets orders directly from George Washington himself, and in those orders it says, and I quote, "The approach of the enemy in that quarter has made a further reinforcement necessary, and I know of no other unit so likely to check their progress
I don't even know what to do.
proportion to its number than that under your command. I have great dependence upon it." Okay, I'm going to say that again, but slower. Check their progress in proportion to your number. Okay, that's George Washington fancy officer speak for, hey, Daniel Morgan, that undignified guerrilla warfare stuff that you do, go do more of it. Okay, if you're not picking up what I'm putting down, I'm trying to tell you that George Washington himself has just pulled the pin on the fuckery grenade that is Daniel Morgan in the Provisional Rifle Corps and thrown it at the British with no orders other than go win. From here, Daniel Morgan and the Provisional Rifle Corps go on a guerrilla warfare rampage, shutting down supply lines, picking off officers, doing absolutely everything they can to answer the British war machine. Okay, and just so we're on the same page, because I really need you to understand this, it's the big takeaway from the video, okay? In the pop culture zeitgeist about the American Revolutionary War, there's something called the American Rifleman Syndrome, and that's basically the pop culture movie Hollywood understanding that America won the Revolutionary War because all of the Americans, the continental military, the militias, absolutely everybody, was a bunch of riflemen hiding in the tree line, picking off the British one at a time. That's not necessarily true by any stretch of the imagination. The continental military of the United States, in large, fought exactly what the British fought. They got in formations, they marched right up with muskets, stood there, and fired at each other. So the American rifleman myth, or the pop culture understanding of the Revolutionary War that everybody was a rifleman hiding in the tree line, is actually heavily influenced by the militias, you know, people like Francis Marion and Swamp Fox doing what he was doing down in South Carolina, but more so, it comes from Daniel Morgan and Morgan's rifles. Okay, and the key and very important difference here is that the militias are just that, they're militias. It's literally a bunch of dudes from one area that got together and were like, hey, I don't like these dudes in the red coats, let's go do something about it. And they're not expected to necessarily fight by the rules of warfare. They're just a bunch of civilians that took up arms and went to go fight. In contrast to that, the Provisional Rifle Corps is part of the Continental Army. The men that comprise it are not a bunch of farmers that grab their musket from over the fireplace and went to war. No, these are professional soldiers that have been trained how to fight in warfare, and then they got grouped together and sent out to conduct asymmetrical warfare against the enemy. In a lot of ways, Morgan's rifles are America's first special forces. What is your profession? And because of this, Morgan's rifles gained a lot of notoriety and honestly a lot of hatred from the British because it's a completely different kind, right? When the militia behaves this way, that's one thing. They're the irregular, non-professional fighting force who just pick up arms. They're going to do whatever they're going to do. They don't really have any oversight. But when Morgan's rifles, an official part of the Continental Army, the professional military, behaves this way, it sends the message to the British of like, hey, We're in this to win. No matter what, we're going to get it done. Okay, we're not picking up on a put down. And Turncoat, Daniel Morgan, and the Provisional Rifle Corps are a huge part of the reason that America has the attitude towards warfare that it does. That if you're not cheap, you're not trying, and it's never a war crime first time, especially if you win. The guerrilla warfare goes on for a couple of months, and then by September of 1777, the British had sent down an army under the command of General Burgoyne to go south and cut the American colonies essentially in half, which would divide the two, and they would divide and conquer, surely leading to a British victory. This absolutely cannot happen, so Horatio Gates and Daniel Morgan are going to go stop him at a place called Saratoga. And right out of the gate, Morgan and his riflemen go out and ensure the Americans are winning before the battle even starts. They begin harassing the British, and on top of that, and more importantly, they end up taking out all the British scouts before they can report back on what the terrain of this battlefield even looks like. So when the battle does start, the Americans are going to have an understanding of the terrain, and the British are not, giving the Americans a huge advantage. Because of this, when the battle does finally kick off at a place called Freeman's Farm, the most prominent British unit, being led by General Simon Fraser, directly tries to attack Morgan's riflemen. And it is on paper a British victory. Essentially what ends up happening is Morgan's riflemen managed to pick off almost all of the officers in his entire unit and like 75% of the artillerymen, and then they just run back into the woods and retreat. But the British did end up taking the land that Morgan's men were defending, so they won the battle. Then at the beginning of the next major engagement, Daniel Morgan sees General Simon Fraser riding into battle on his horse, orders one of his men to scale a tree and take out this general. He does, the shot lands, General Simon Fraser is killed. This is a humongous hit to the British military. According to myth, this shot was taken by the legendary American rifleman Kennedy Murphy. However, a lot of historians have come out and said that they have no evidence to even believe that he was on this battlefield at all, let alone being the man that took the shot that killed General Fraser. However, we do know for sure that it was one of Daniel Morgan's men. While Morgan and his men are picking people off from the woodline, General Horatio Gates and Benedict Arnold take control of the conventional forces, lead them into battle, and start taking the fight through the British, and they actually start winning. And then at some point, Morgan's men get eyes on General Burgoyne, and they start trying to pick him off as well. So General Burgoyne is standing there watching his superior British military falter as he's taking gunfire directly. Morgan's men end up hitting his horse. They get a round that goes through his jacket, barely missing him, and then another round hits his hat, somehow missing him as well. At this point, General Burgoyne is like, fuck this, we gotta fall back. So the British fall back, they consolidate their position, they're trying to figure out what to do. General Burgoyne comes to the conclusion he's just gonna have to retreat from this battlefield. So he sends out scouts to start figuring out where the fuck all the Americans are, because remember, Morgan and his men were taken out of the scouts, so they don't know the battlefield, they don't know where the Americans are, they're trying to find a route to get out of this fight. And at the same time, Morgan and his riflemen sneak around the backside of the British, and they're able to pick off all of these scouts looking for an escape route, meaning that Burgoyne interprets as he's completely surrounded, and he is forced to surrender. Okay, this is arguably the most important victory in American history, because America winning Saratoga is the first time that the Americans beat an actual British army in its entirety on the battlefield and forced them to surrender. This is the reason that the French felt compelled to back the United States as a whole and go against the British in the first place, agreeing to send reinforcements. If it wasn't for Saratoga, the French would have never helped, and America would have never become its own country. And while not all of the credit for this victory goes to Daniel Morgan and his riflemen, a disproportionate amount of it does. And this is why the commemorative hanging of the Battle of Saratoga, the surrender of General Burgoyne, shows General Burgoyne surrendering to General Horatio Gates, with Daniel Morgan pretty much up front and center, being a giant compared to everybody else, dressed in all white.
Don't you know you're not supposed to wear white after Labor Day?
We started this project, our scope work was just replacing the roof. Started putting the roof together, realized there were some huge structural issues.
This is all the wood damage from termites.
So basically we're having to rebuild the whole roof, the rafters and everything. We brought that up to the project manager. They had to do an emergency work order. So using Jobber right here in the field, I was able to put together a quote, and they approved right there on the spot, almost a 6-figure change order, approved and done within minutes to get the job wrapped.
We're trying to make sure that it's as cheap and as quick as possible all the time. What I like with my business is I work with the homeowners. I like to get all the information that they want and just make their project come to reality. For me, I I take every single bit as a challenge to make sure that they're satisfied no matter what. You know, that it costs pays a bit more money. We don't mind. We just want to make sure that clients are satisfied when they leave. If they're not satisfied, they're not satisfied. So we can make sure that that happens.
After the battle of Snowplowing, Lincoln was likely to go back on north and help General George Washington. They don't really partake in any major battles. Instead, George Washington just kind of lets him off the leash to go conduct and carry out guerrilla warfare against the British wherever they can. This takes place all throughout 1778, primarily around New Jersey. Although all that's going on, a couple things happen to really piss off Daniel Morgan, primarily that he gets passed up the promotion on separate occasions, so that some other officer could become a general before him, even though those officers were far less qualified and delivers far less results than Daniel Morgan. A couple of reasons Daniel Morgan got passed up for promotion. One, he carries out undignified warfare. Two, he doesn't come from a wealthy aristocratic family. He's literally a homeless kid from Virginia that has somehow become a colonel of the Continental Army. He should be happy where he's already at. They don't want to let him into the General's Club. And three, Daniel Morgan doesn't really play the politics game, which is what you have to do to become a general at this point in time. Daniel Morgan thinks that his results should speak for themselves. Unfortunately, it just doesn't seem to work that way. And this is all very important to Daniel Morgan because remember, he's always got that chip on his shoulder about wanting more and more status. He's that poor.
Wow. You think everywhere else had fucking snow? I still don't know where the fucking bags are. Oh, I drove straight in. You see that path straight in? That's in between two of the bags. All of a sudden the snow, like I could only take a half blade. I'm floating. And all of a sudden the snow's fucking 8 feet deep. I just stopped, like there has to be a bag there. Why else would the snow pile up like that? I still couldn't even tell, like I'm sure. Oh, I'm sure I did. I had to have. Fuck, there's so much snow. Like, it went up over the bag. Like, there was snow higher than the fucking knuckles, for fuck's sake. And I just stopped and I'm looking at it. I'm pretty much, like, I was just pretty much snowplowing the bag the first pass. And then eventually into it a little bit. I think I put a split in it about, fuck that. Yeah. Right in the middle, I think. About that far off the ground. Yeah. Because when I backed up, I kind of just saw it. I was like, I'm pretty sure I saw a split there. Fuck. And the snow slid so fast, but... Windshield wipers working good now, at least. I still can't see shit. Like, tell me where the bags are from fucking right. Yeah, man, I'm driving around with the door open. I can see them when I'm up at the top. But can you see where I just drove straight in through the approach and just went straight? Right there, like when you come back there, you'll see, like I cut a path in a straight line, and right about here is where I was, holy fuck, that's a bag. No, but now I know where I can see that one as I come around that end. Because yeah, like if you drive around the top of it, you can see a few spots where the air opened it up, but only from that side. From this side, you can't see them. It's epic, man. No, I'm gonna, because there, I got quite a bit to roll on that side still, and right here, so yeah. It's like right there. Like right there, yeah, there's a bag right there. Right there, there's the air path, right beside that. I'm in on the other side. You can see where I drove in there. I take your truck, it'll be a long walk. But you can probably drive down the little path I made. But it's, yeah. But I stopped real quick, so yeah. No, I'm just gonna do the outside because fuck, I gotta roll. Yeah, I gotta get it away, so I'll be a couple hours till I'm done that. I'm gonna stay 6 feet. Like this side, I'm almost done. I'm gonna do a couple more passes and do that till tomorrow. Sun will be okay. This is what was happening out west earlier. Oh fuck, log trucks just appear. Oh yeah, they just appear out of the mist now. Yeah, oh god. They're flying by. Only that way. Yeah. Pretty wild. Wait, there's certain spots where it's a fucking 2 feet over the blade though. Like this, wait till you, when you go around the edge and through the dip up there and the dip over there, fucking double. Like the blade's going underneath the snow. It's wild. Fuck, left my back window up and it's covered in snow now. But I got beer, fuck, yeah. Welcome everybody. That like button. Oh, my phone's so
should speak for themselves. Unfortunately, it just doesn't seem to work that way. And this is all very important to Daniel Morgan because remember, he's always got that chip on his shoulder about wanting more and more status. He's that poor kid from West Virginia that wanted to be one of the elite. So when he keeps getting passed up for this promotion for people that are less qualified than him, it absolutely infuriates him to the point that he ends up quitting and resigning his post with the United States Continental Army. That's what he does. He literally says, fuck you guys, I quit, and goes back home to Frederick County, Virginia to run his farm. And while he's there running his farm, they are begging him to come back on multiple occasions. Everybody's asking him. George Washington, Horatio Gates, they all want Daniel Morgan to come back. And the situation becomes so dire that General Horatio Gates actually rides out to basically beg Daniel Morgan to take his job back in person, right? Because if anybody knows how good Daniel Morgan actually is, it's General Horatio Gates, right? Because Horatio Gates at this point in time is praised as the genius of Saratoga that led the American Continental Army into battle and turned the tide of the entire war against the British. But in reality, Horatio Gates knows that Daniel Morgan is the motherfucker that's actually responsible for that, and they need him in the fight. To this, Daniel Morgan is like, yeah, I'll come back, sure, absolutely, but I'm only going to do it if you make me a general. To which Horatio Gates is like, Congress has to approve that. I don't know if I can get it done. I'll try for you, but I can't promise anything. To which Daniel Morgan is like, cool, okay, well, go try and let me know how that goes. I'll be waiting here. To which Horatio Gates is like, just come back, and I guarantee you I will get Congress to push this through and you will become a general. If so facto, Daniel Morgan gets promoted to Brigadier General and he is back in this fight. Daniel Morgan and his men get put under the command of my other favorite Revolutionary War general, George Washington's right-hand man, Nathaniel Greene, aka the Fighting Quaker. Now, I don't want to turn this into a Nathaniel Greene video, so we're just going to go ahead and say that Nathaniel Greene is a truly exceptional general and also very, very important to the Revolutionary War, and one of the things that he understands is to let people do what they're good at, and that is why he gives Daniel Morgan the orders to take his men and become a flying army in South Carolina. His orders are essentially to never engage in pitched battle, run around in the backwoods of South Carolina, and fuck up the British's day. And that's exactly what Daniel Morgan does. He gets to it immediately. It doesn't take long before the British figure out, fuck, that Daniel Morgan guy's back and he's ruining everything. So the British, realizing they have to do something to stop Daniel Morgan and his men, send in one of their best guys with his unit, Bannister Tarleton. This guy, in many ways, is the British equivalent of Daniel Morgan. He does not like pitched battle. He prefers guerrilla warfare tactics. The only real difference here is that Daniel Morgan is the poor kid that developed tactics and earned his way up the ladder. Whereas Bannister Tarleton came from this wealthy aristocratic family and daddy bought him his commission as an officer. So he doesn't really have the same amount of experience and ability, and he makes up for it by being overtly aggressive and extremely brutal. Just so we're on the same page, this is literally the guy that Malfoy's dad from the movie The Patriot Marriott is portraying in that movie. Prior to being sent to engage Daniel Morgan, Tarleton was engaging Francis Marion, aka the Swamp Fox, the other guy that inspired Mel Gibson's character in The Patriot. While engaging Francis Marion and Daniel Morgan in South Carolina, he was known to be unnecessarily harsh to civilians by confiscating livestock, forcing people to board as soldiers in their homes. In addition to that, he was also accused of slaughtering a bunch of Continental troops after they surrendered at what is known as a Buford massacre. Now, that's the American perspective, but the British perspective was that Tarleton was an extremely effective officer, and the unit that he had under his command was referred to as the Legion. They were highly mobile, and they were regarded as one of the best units in the British military, especially in the South under the command of General Cornwallis. I mean, this is a headliner, right? This is shaping up to be the coolest battle of the American Revolution. In the red, white, and blue corner, we've got America's flying army under the command of Daniel Morgan, a literal giant that has defied death after being sentenced to 500
not Alaska.
This
is northern Alberta.
Shot in the face with a musket ball. The poor kid that came from nothing.
I get why you would think that, though.
On his way to the top. And then in the key and crumpets corner, we have the British Legion being led into battle by Bannister Tarleton, known for his highly effective aggression and brutality. Two of the only and very best asymmetrical warfare units of their time, the special forces of their day, going head-to-head in South Carolina. And it all comes to a head January 17, 1781 at the Battle of Cowpens. After playing,
I am snowplowing out grain bags. Farmers now, if you don't have bin space, you put your grain in a bag on the ground. That's those long white bags you see in a field. Well, I'm attempting to plow 3 of those out so that we can haul grain. So I am just out in a field in northern Alberta trying to find 3 white bags buried in snow in a snowstorm. That's what I'm trying to do. And they're still invisible. It's a little sketchy, but I just keep getting closer and closer, but I gotta roll them out wide because we gotta be able to get super bees in here. Then we'll hook an extractor onto the bag and load the grain into a super bee and off to the elevator or wherever it happens to be sold to. I'd rather be skidooing, but this is what I gotta do today. Yeah, it's a good time though. I like running tractors, so.
Cat and mouse with Tarleton for months, Daniel Morgan has decided he's going to throw his adversary a curveball. He is going to try to engage him in pitch battle, something neither of them are known for. For this battle, Daniel Morgan picks a location known as the Cowpens because it's like the inside of the cow's pen. It is a muddy, swampy, nasty fucking mess. And the reason this land is such a muddy, swampy mess is because it's situated right in between 2 rivers, a location that Daniel Morgan picked for the very specific reason of going against Tarleton. See, about half of Daniel Morgan's force is comprised of militia. Militia is not good at pitch battle. They're known for firing one volley and then all running off and fleeing. They're not good at it. They're not reliable. They're not trained soldiers. And Daniel Morgan knows that. So by situating them in between 2 rivers, it's going to make retreating impossible, and it's going to force the militia to stand and fight. And Daniel Morgan knows that Tarleton is going to know exactly what Daniel Morgan is doing. So the way that Tarleton is going to receive this is going to be Daniel Morgan honestly thinks in his arrogance that he can situate his militia between 2 rivers, forcing them to not retreat, and they're going to be able to stand up against me and the British Legion? Absolutely not. He is baiting Tarleton into fighting him head on. And Tarleton is obviously going to take the bait. So the night before the battle, Daniel Morgan decides he needs to let everybody in on this strategy that he's got cooked up, and he's got to hype up the men. He's got to get them ready and excited for battle. So Daniel Morgan, the, at this point, legendary military general known for his undignified guerrilla warfare tactics, is walking around the camp, hyping up his men, shirtless, carrying a sword, showing off all the scars on his back, telling his men, we're fucking up the British tomorrow. Bear in mind, this dude is 6'2". He's essentially a giant among men, and he's walking around with all the scars proving that he's defied death multiple times, telling his guys we're gonna win.
I will make sure that this never happens to anyone else again.
Hey, the men are pumped. They're being led into battle by Daniel Morgan. Andrew Pickens, a legendary militiaman, is leading the militia. And we've got George Washington's cousin here on horseback. There's no way we're going to lose. We've got way too many main characters. So the day of the battle, they're pumped. They're ready to go. They get into the formation exactly how Daniel Morgan told them to. And as Tarleton's forces come up, Tarleton realizes that Daniel Morgan, either in an incredible display of stupidity or arrogance, has stuck his militia in the center of his formation.
I'm dreaming. I see militia forming the placenta.
No traditionally trained military officer would ever even remotely consider putting their militia in the center, because if they flee, the entire formation is going to collapse within itself, and that's it, game over. That's why you put the militia out on the side, on one of the flanks, and then if one of your flanks disintegrates, I mean, it sucks, but it's not the end of the world. It's the difference between getting shot in the arm and getting shot directly in the chest. So Daniel Morgan has effectively done the exact opposite of what anybody would recommend he should do by having the militia in the center and the Continental forces on the flanks.
Our war, fight the enemy where they are. After all these years, we just can't. That is not what it means.
And Tarleton, in his default hyper-aggressiveness, is going to show Daniel Morgan the fatal flaw that he had just committed as soon as this battle kicks off. Tarleton orders the Legion to attack the American formation head-on, attempting to scatter the militia at its center, collapsing the American formation, and taking the battlefield immediately. As the British Legion approaches the American formation head-on, the American militiamen fire a volley. The British continue to advance. The militiamen fire a second volley. It does not stop the British. They continue to advance. At which point, the militia members break ranks, they turn around, and they flee, just like they were ordered to by Daniel Morgan last night. The militia members begin running up a small hill behind them, and as Tarleton sees that the American formation is collapsing in its center, just like he knew it would, he orders the British to bayonet charge and break ranks. The British legionnaires chase them down at a dead sprint, trying to catch the Americans. They lose sight of the militiamen momentarily as they go down the backside of the hill, and as the legionnaires reach the top of the hill, they have the biggest oh fuck moment in the American Revolution. What the now out of ranks, out of formation horde of British soldiers see is that the American militiamen are now reformed up with an additional 600 Continental soldiers formed up directly behind them in what is now a massive wall of musket fire, as the original flanks of the formation turn and box them in, and William Washington's dragoons pull up on the rear side of the battlefield, boxing them in entirely.
Did that go the way you thought it was going to go? Nope.
The Americans opened fire with one humongous volley before launching a counter bayonet charge and crushing the British Legion in a matter of minutes. Over 86% of the entire military force has been killed or captured. If the Battle of Saratoga wasn't the most pivotal moment in the Revolutionary War, the Battle of Cowpens was. Daniel Morgan has effectively just hit the British Empire with the rope-a-dope. Bannister Tarleton.
Yeah, we're at a point where everybody's got to shovel their damn roofs off. That's how much snow we got. Oh, we're probably sitting like right there in front. That's probably between 3 and 4 feet. So it's enough. That's for sure. How's everybody doing? She's a little nasty out, but it's not really going to get any better, so may as well just keep at it until I get her done. I think I got about 9 fucking beds to plow out here, so it's going to be an interesting situation. But got nothing else to do, so. I can drink beer, so it's not so freaking bad. Oh, pretty soon it's going to be dark out, and it's really hard to fucking see. It's going to be back to her. You hook too much and she just sucks you right in. Have a good one, man. Pretty close to the bag on this side. Let's roll this out. Widen her all out.
Did end up getting away, but with his legion effectively obliterated, the British military was essentially crippled and would never recover. After the Battle of Cowpens, General Nathaniel Greene would confront General Cornwallis, utilizing the exact same tactic that General Morgan had created, and it was effective yet again, forcing Cornwallis to fall back to Yorktown, where he would remain until the French showed up in Chesapeake Bay, laying siege to Yorktown, effectively ending the American Revolutionary War, with America the victor. Daniel Morgan would return back home, his body effectively worn out. He would be riddled with chronic illness and chronic pain for the remainder of his life. To commemorate his victory at Cowpens and the pivotal role that he played in the American Revolution, in 1790, the United States Congress gifted Daniel Morgan a one-of-a-kind gold medal depicting his victory at Cowpens with the inscription, "Victory, the Defender of Liberty," on the back. This is worth noting, they obviously didn't have the Medal of Honor back then. I'm assuming that having Congress strike you a one-of-a-kind medal made out of gold is on par with the Medal of Honor, but I'm not really sure. Then in 1794, Daniel Morgan would be brought back into service very briefly to lead troops to stop the Whiskey Rebellion. And then again in 1794, he would make one last contribution to the historical record, aka the Frederick County Court Files, when he was in trouble for breaking a man's jaw in a bar fight when he was 59 years old. He would then get to go back home, live out the rest of his life with his wife Abigail before passing away in 1802. And that is the story of America's most gangster general from the Revolutionary War, the undignified guerrilla, Daniel Morgan. Thank you for watching. Best way to support the channel is go buy some merch over at thefatelectrician.com. Quack bang, out. Undignified guerrilla is 1,000% going on a ship.
So these are the new collab cases from Max, designed with a 5-part camera control button, silicone diaphragm construction for a perfect tactile feel, impact and scratch resistant glass, and a high-tech PCB layer, so your button works seamlessly with Apple's design. And the protection on this case is wild. Enhanced with AirShock technology that absorbs and spreads out energy upon impact. Raised edges on the front and back for even more protection, keeping your screen and camera free from direct hits. It also has built-in anti-yellowing treatment that blocks UV and prevents oil absorption. Unlike cheap Amazon cases that turn yellow, ours doesn't. And you do the 38.
So now there's like 147 Hummer hamburgers looking around like, oh shit, what do we do? And the third and final officer takes off running. Believe it or not, it's pretty hard to run in a rice paddy, and you can't run very fast, but he also didn't have to run very far, so At least on the bright side, he didn't die tight. So at this point, Carlos is shot twice, John Burke is shot once. That's 3 shots from one location. They got to bounce. But for some reason, Carlos is like, hold on, let's wait a second. Because as he's watching this like 147 dudes, they're just
I'm going to call her,
they don't know
guys.
what to do. They just bunker down out in the open in the middle of this field.
I got to charge my phone up here before it dies, but... yeah, there's apparently grain bags somewhere in that. I'll find them. Thanks for watching, guys. Have a good one.